Okay, so let's unpack this. We are diving into a really specific moment in time, the early 2000s. This is when guitarists were really starting to realize that the future of their tone might not fit into a giant 4 by 12 cabinet.
Right. For years, the dream had been, how do I get that pro-level amp tone?
Right.
The kind of stuff you hear on records without miking up a vintage amp in a perfectly treated room. It just wasn't practical.
And for players trying to figure that out, the BOS GP20 amp factory really showed up as this crucial bridge.
It took this advanced digital modeling and just shrunk it down. It was a legitimate alternative to those huge, clunky rack processors.
That's it, exactly. Our whole deep dive today is focused on this one twin pedal unit. Released back in 2001, the GP20, it wasn't just another distortion box. It was a genuine pioneer for the compact amp modeler.
Yeah, its identity is super specific. It's an amp modeler, a cabinet simulator, and a DI preamp all in one. And since we're going deep, let's just quickly explain DI for you. It means direct injection. It's basically a box that takes your guitar signal and gets it ready level, impedance, everything, to plug straight into a mixer or an audio interface. The GP20 was built to do that, but with incredible tone bakes right in.
And it did it all in that classic Beyer SS twin pedal format. Small enough for a pedal board, but, built like a tank for the road.
And the tech inside, that's really the core of its whole legacy.
What are we talking about specifically?
We're talking about composite object sound modeling, COSM.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, this was BOSS and Roland's flagship tech. It had already been proven in their big GT series floorboards and the Roland VG guitars. So what you've got in the GP20 is this really mature, high-end modeling engine, just in a much smaller package.
So the mission for this deep dive is pretty clear. Let's unpack this thing, figure out its place in history, and, why its sound is still something people seek out today. Let's jump into the first part. The architecture and just how it all works.
What's so interesting to me is how they managed to get such a pro sound while keeping it so simple to use. The modeling is, it's all digital COSM, but there's a key piece here. It has a discrete analog front-end circuit.
Okay, why does that matter? That sounds like a technical detail, but it feels important.
Oh, it's a huge difference. It's the difference between feeling like you're plugging into a computer and feeling like you're plugging into an actual amplifier.
Right.
That front end handles the impedance, and more importantly, it mimics how an analog gain stage behaves. So when you dig in and hit the strings hard, the digital model reacts with that sag and compression you'd expect from a real tube amp. It doesn't just, hit a digital wall.
Which leads us straight to maybe the biggest selling point, especially if you're looking at one today. The design is so straightforward. We're talking about a time when other companies were cramming these tiny little screens and menus into everything. The GP20 had 0 menus. None.
Exactly. It was all about workflow. You've got your main knobs right on top, gain, bass, middle, treble level presence, and then 2 big selector knobs, amp type and speaker type. You want more mids, you just grab the middle knob.
It was so refreshing for musicians who were just tired of menu diving.
Okay, I have to push back just a little on that, though. Wasn't that lack of deep editing a bit of a limitation? I mean, were players really happy giving up things like a built-in noise gate or, specific delay settings just for simplicity?
That's a totally fair question. And yes, if you needed a full multi-effects unit, this wasn't it. But the GP20 wasn't trying to be a GT6.
It had a different job. It had a very specific job. Replace the amp in your signal chain. For a session guy who already had their favorite delay and reverb pedals, this thing just gave them a simple, high-quality core tone. It was incredibly focused.
And that focus carries right over to the foot switches and the dual channel operation. This is a key feature you need to understand.
Correct. The left switch is your bypass standard stuff, but the right switch is for cycling through channels or memory presets. And the crucial part is you can set up 2 totally different sounds, channel A and channel B, within a single preset.
Which means in practice.
It means you get true 2-channel amp behavior. You could have channel A set to a beautiful, clean Fender Twin sound.
Right.
And then channel B could be a screaming Marshall JCM 800 lead. And with one stomp, you jump between them instantly. No lag.
That's a game changer for playing live back then. It basically turns this one pedal into 2 different amp heads.
Absolutely.
And speaking of playing live, let's talk about the I/O, the inputs and outputs, because this is where you can really see its professional DNA.
Yes. This is one of the most important takeaways from our sources, and it's a feature people often overlook, that little output selector switch.
Explain the 2 settings on there, amp and line.
Okay, so if you set it to amp, the pedal assumes you're plugging into the front of a guitar amp. It flattens out the EQ curve a bit so it sounds good going into another amp's tone, controls, and speaker.
Makes sense.
But if you select line, that's for going direct. The GP20 optimizes the frequency curve to go straight into a PA system, a mixing board, and audio interface.
And that was a huge deal in 2001, wasn't it?
Oh, massive. Before this kind of smart modeling, running a pedal direct to a mixer usually sounded awful. Just a fizzy, buzzy, ice pick in the ears kind of sound.
I know that sound.
Yeah, we all do. This switch engaged the right cabinet simulation to smooth all that out, making it instantly usable for a sound engineer. It just worked.
So it's not just an amp modeler, it's an integrated DI that's actually thinking about where the sound is going. All managed with 8 user presets and a manual mode. Super efficient. All right, let's get into the fun part. Section 2. The sound palette. This is why people are still hunting these things down. BOSS packed 22 iconic amp models in here.
They really did. They weren't just covering the basics. They were modeling a history of guitar tone. In the clean category, you've got all the essentials: the chime of a Vox AC30, the glassy sound of a Fender Twin Reverb, the thick mids of a Bassman.
And even the Roland JC120, right, for that super clean, almost sterile sound.
Exactly, a great clean platform. And then you move into British Crunch and you get the must-haves, the Marshall Plexi for that late 60s overdrive.
And the JCM 800 for the tighter, more aggressive 80s thing.
Right. And they even threw in a Hiwatt style model, which is known for its huge clean headroom, a really powerful, specific British voice.
But BOSS knew what was happening in the 2000s. Music was getting heavier. How did they handle the high gain stuff?
They went for the amps that really define that era. You have models based on the Mesa Boogie Mark II for those smooth, singing lead tones.
And the big one, the Mesa Dual Rectifier, the sound of modern metal at the time.
For sure. And crucially, they also put in a Soldano-style amp that gave you that hot-rodded, really focused, modern gain.
I love that they didn't stop there, though. They have boutique and exotic models, too. Matchless, Supro.
Yeah, the Matchless for that complex chime, the Supro for that gritty, lo-fi blues sound, a Tweed Deluxe, and they even included some unique COSM hybrid tones and a dedicated acoustic voicing. They were trying to cover all the bases for a session player.
We should touch on the cabinet simulations, though. You mentioned modern stuff uses impulse responses, IRs. This is different.
Very different. This uses 5 simple COSM blocks. Think of them as approximations: a 1x8, a 1x10, a 1x12, a 2x12 open back, and a 4x12 closed back.
So not super detailed or customizable. What does that mean for the actual tone?
It means they're functional, but they don't have all the tiny nuances of a modern IR. But, and this is the real aha moment with the GP20, the fixed nature of those simple cab blocks, combined with that specific COSM engine, is exactly what gives it its unique sound.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting then. If you put this pedal up against a modern modeler, the GP20 might sound less real, but people actively seek it out for that specific character. Why?
The sources all kind of agree on this. The GP20's overall sound is just warmer, it's less harsh, it has these sort of analog rounded edges. A lot of early digital gear could sound really brittle and piercing on the high end. The GP20 is smooth, it has a really nice dynamic feel for its time, it's musical, even if it is a bit, lo-fi by today's standards.
That lo-fi but musical idea is everything. It has its own flavor, but let's be honest about the trade-off. The sources mentioned the high-gain models can feel a little grainy.
Yes. That's a perfect word for it. They don't have the super tight saturation of a modern model. But that specific grain, that early 2000s digital grit, that's its character now. It wasn't about perfect realism. It was its own distinctive voice. And for some styles of rock, that little bit of imperfection is exactly what you want.
Okay, let's move to section 3. Use cases and legacy. Why should you, the listener, even care about a 20-year-old modeler today? Well, the ways you can use it are still totally relevant.
The number one use is still direct recording. It hasn't changed. As a DI with that smart output switch, it's just great for getting ideas down or even for final takes, especially if you want that early 2000s texture.
And for playing live, that A-B switching makes it a perfect 2-channel rig, or just as an amp replacement on your pedal board, feeding a PA or modern FRFR speakers.
And we should probably clarify FRFR for you. It stands for full range, flat response. It's a speaker system that doesn't add its own color to the sound, unlike a normal guitar cab, which shapes the sound a lot. For a modeler like the GP20, you need an FRFR speaker to properly hear the amp and cabinet simulation it's creating.
Beyond the obvious guitar stuff, the sources pointed out some cool, surprising uses too.
Yeah, a couple of them. One is that the vintage amp models, the Fender and Vox ones, sound amazing with keyboards and electric pianos. It gives them this great, organic, slightly overdriven feel.
That's cool.
And the other is in modern, alternative, and lo-fi music. Producers are using it because of that unique COSM texture. Those so-called artifacts become features, not bugs.
So this brings us to its landmark status.
Yeah.
How did the GP20 actually shape the market?
I think if you look at the bigger picture, as one of the very first compact pedals that was only an amp modeler. It separated amp modeling from the big, complicated multi-effects units.
It took that high-end tech out of the huge floorboards and just put it in a simple pedal.
Exactly. It basically paved the way for everything we have now, from a Strymon Iridium to a Line 6 HX Stomp. It made the idea of a compact, tone-only amp replacement pedal a legitimate thing.
And its target was really specific. Session players who needed a silent stage, worship guitarists, studio engineers.
Yeah, anyone who needed reliable, predictable DI tones without all the hassle of mics and heavy amps. It just simplified everything.
So let's quickly sum up the pros and cons for you. The pros are pretty obvious. Super intuitive, huge range of iconic tones, that great two-channel operation, and that warm, characterful COSM sound.
And the considerations are just as important.
Yeah.
It's got limited tweakability compared to what's out there now. You can't load your own IRs, and the EQ is kind of fixed by the cab choice. And of course, it's discontinued, so the collector value is starting to creep up.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? I think the GP20 succeeded because it offered professional sound and real flexibility, but it never lost its focus on simplicity. It's this perfect example of early digital gear that didn't fall into the trap of information overload. It just gave you focused, usable tone.
Totally agree. It's an underrated gem. It really represents the best of VOSS innovation from that time, a device that proved you could have 22 different amplifiers without a single menu screen. It shows that sometimes limiting the complexity actually gives you a more focused and ultimately more timeless tool.
Which leaves us with a final thought for you to chew on. We spent a bit of time talking about how the GP20's high-gain sounds could be seen as greeny or lo-fi. So think about this. How often do the sonic imperfections of older technology, those little character flaws, end up becoming the most sought-after defining textures for new music genres years down the line? Is today's constant quest for hyper-realistic, perfectly transparent modeling just setting the stage for what will become tomorrow's most beloved, quirky, and vintage digital character flaws? Something to think about.